All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to another Design Lab webinar. We're really excited about this topic, mainly because it's brand new, and also this is something new for me, probably new for a lot of you, but we'll give everyone probably a minute or two to get situated, to join, say hello in the chat. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're from. Share your LinkedIn info, all that fun stuff. If you have questions along the way during the presentation, go ahead and post those in the questions tab, and then we'll get to it at the end of the presentation. So we're really excited to have you all here. Yeah, let us know where you're from. I'm in San Diego. Will, where are you based out of?
I'm in Chicago.
In Chicago,
I can literally hear the wind outside my door right now.
Oh my goodness. It is not windy here, but it's sunny, but I guess that's per usual San Diego weather.
Yeah.
Cool. Yay. Wow. We have someone from Nigeria. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. Wow.
Very
Yay.
cool.
Welcome. All right. So again, for those just joining, house rules, say hello in the chat, share your LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. Questions, go in the questions tab. And we're actually going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Emily. I'm the community manager for Design Lab. If you are part of our community, you have seen me in and out of Slack and or Discord posting things left and right. But now we got to put a face to the name. So that's awesome. I'm so happy you're all here. And today I have Will with me. We're going to be talking about, well, I guess Will's going to be talking about Web3 secured by Bitcoin and any design opportunities within the Stacks ecosystem. So like I said, I'm really excited. This is something that is a brand new topic to me. I don't even know where to start in terms of talking about it. So I'm excited to learn from you, Will, but I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and then we can get started.
Very cool. Thank you, Emily. Really excited to be here. I'm the grant program manager at the Stacks Foundation, and we'll talk a bit more about what Stacks is here in a second. But before I was the grant program manager at this Web3 decentralized foundation, logically enough, I was an architect for about 15, 20 years. And in the period of time where I was coming to terms with the fact that like I wasn't really happy being an architect, but I love design, I love technology, I actually went through Design Lab. I went through the full course and I got to the halfway point, and then unfortunately I had to stop before the capstone projects began because my day job responsibilities were encroaching. But I love UX design. My partner, she's actually a front end engineer at a crypto wallet company, and so just being involved in the space and knowing that there are so many amazing user experience and design challenges within Web3 because it is a very seemingly complex paradigm shift in the internet. And I think that is because money and value can be like very confusing to people because it's just not something that you ever really question because it's there. It's why question it. And so getting people acclimated with that can be confusing. And I think there are really amazing design problems to confront in that space. So just gonna get my keyboard working. Okay, so we're first gonna talk about Web3 in general, just kind of what that means. I know that it's maybe a buzz term that people have heard, maybe have different opinions about. And then talk about Bitcoin and then how Stacks relates to Bitcoin and how Bitcoin relates to Web3. And then talk a bit more about the grants program and different support opportunities within the Stacks ecosystem specifically. So really, like, if you think about Web 1, people refer to it as like the read phase. And then Web 2 was read write. There's a lot of like ability to create an application where you can say like create a Yelp page and then people can write Yelp reviews. So that's that read write user contribution. And so that's like one was the internet, basically like decentralization of information was Web 1, and then Web 2 people call it like decentralization of publishing. And you could see all of these different publishing platforms come into the world and really disrupting like legacy media, things like that, journalism, and now Web3 that's sort of like read, write, own. And people like to think of this as like decentralizing value. And so really like what enables that is blockchain technology and smart contracts. And so blockchain technology and smart contracts, those are really like, if you think about the strata of the internet and the base layers. So if at like a very low level, you think about all data and how data like really kind of gets siloed within major cloud service providers. And so what happens is all that data gets then behind like a paywall, or it's an ad based business that supports all that overhead. And so really, because it's free and the data is centralized, a lot of people will say that, when you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And I think that people kind of understand that about the internet today, where, hey, there's a lot of amazing stuff out there. A lot of it's free. We take that for granted almost, but I think that the trade-off is that your data is obviously like being sold to people, and it's also siloed within a centralized area. And so that centralized area can become a honeypot for hackers and people to like exploit and leak that data. And it can also be used in ways in terms of like surveillance and different, dystopian ideas where that data in that centralized format can be used. And so really trying to move it away from the centralized format into a more decentralized format requires broad consensus. And so you can't really like, the long history of Bitcoin and blockchain technology starts with what people, you maybe heard this term, but it's called the Byzantine generals problem. And it sounds really, really fascinating, but it's actually like an old computer science problem that had been solved and resolved or attempted to be solved for a long period of time. And really what it means is like, how do a bunch of different parties sort of gain consensus over a decision without having prior knowledge of all of those different parties? And so the Byzantine generals problem was solved with blockchain technology. And so blockchain technology is kind of, you have data sets that are stored on a lot of different locations, and then they are reconciled and reach consensus through different algorithms. And so when you hear about different protocols and different chains or different ecosystems, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Algorand, Tezos, Polkadot, all of these different protocols, there's probably some different nuances in the way that they are reaching that consensus. And so there's people will talk about the blockchain trilemma. And so there's like, you imagine like a three-legged stool, and you can make different design trade-offs when it comes to decentralization, when it comes to speed, and when it comes to scalability. And so it's like, how fast do you want transactions to be? How decentralized do you want them to be? And how like many participants in the protocol do you want to have? And so really like what, I think when you go through and you survey the landscape of all of these different protocols, a lot of people will arrive at a conclusion that I've arrived at, which is Bitcoin, it's the slowest, like in terms of like its innovation cycles, and it does the least. But that kind of slow and steadiness is like actually the perfect base layer for considering something that you want to engage with as like an internet native money, something that doesn't really attempt to do a whole lot, but it's just like, that it's like, it does that one thing and it does that one thing really well. and it's like the most tried and true. It's the blockchain that's been around the longest. It has the most hash rate, the most durability, the most stability. And so the hash rate is really like the amount of computing power that secures the blockchain. And so you imagine like, okay, we want to try and hack this database. Well, if you want to hack Google or hack the Pentagon or something like that, you can do that, but you can't hack Bitcoin because the overall computing power that secures it is literally, it's too expensive to hack. Like in order to have a 51% takeover of Bitcoin, it would require trillions of dollars to do. And so that's one layer. And then also the decentralization. So you think about all of the incentives because of the, basically the value of Bitcoin has led to a lot more and more mining, and a lot of people, the how old it is as a chain has led to a lot more validators. So you can think of the consensus of Bitcoin. I've heard people explain it as like, imagine that every 10 minutes, someone drops a new puzzle in front of all of the miners. And it's just like all these puzzle pieces. And all of the miners have to like put together the puzzle and solve the puzzle. And it's one thing to solve the puzzle. And so they'll hold the puzzle up and they'll be like, hey, I think I have the answer. But then, so that's what the miner's role is, to solve the puzzle. But then there's also the node operators. And I actually run a full node in my apartment. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people around the world that run nodes. All the nodes, they all have to agree together and say, yep, that's the right answer. And so you could have all these people competing to solve the puzzle, but unless all of the node operators also agree that that's the right answer, it's not the right answer. And so it's that kind of relationship between, and that check and balance between the miners and the validators that leads to the overall decentralization of that protocol. And so also to double click on is the idea of energy consumption with Bitcoin mining. And I know that there's like a real concern about that, but I think the longer that the industry is around and the more valuable that Bitcoin becomes, that is actually the greatest incentive to find the most energy efficient and most renewable resources to do Bitcoin mining. So you can see charts recently over the last, I think, 18 months, a big majority of the Bitcoin mining hash rate has actually moved to the United States, and the overall like energy profile of how much of it is renewable now has, I think, tripled. It went from like 20% to 60%. And as mining becomes more and more competitive and more lucrative, it will continue to go more and more towards renewable energy. And it's also that incentive is actually driving a lot of research into renewable energies, which is great. So thinking about, okay, Web3, there was this idea that Bitcoin was going to be first an electronic cash system. And really, you don't want to use Bitcoin for small, like I'm going to buy a cup of coffee types of things. And so I think that really what has become its role within an economy is like a store of value. And so you can think of that as like, hey, this is like gold and it stores long-term value. And yes, there's price volatility, but really like that is part of like the market trying to discover what the true price of it is. And so as time goes on, the price volatility will level out. And if you look at it over the 13-year existence it has. And so as that value begins to like, not fluctuate so much, I think that you'll begin that narrative of it being like a store of value will become more commonplace. But really it's like that value and the decentralization and the security is what makes it the great base layer for Web3. So if anything that you're going to do on Web3 deals with smart contracts, and smart contracts have to have security, decentralization, and scalability. You like, depending on the use case, you probably don't want to skip on the security part. And so all of this is to like say, hey, like we feel like Bitcoin as the base layer is really, really, really secure. And so when you start to think about scalability and programmability and like functions, like expressive functions, that's where Stacks comes in. And so Stacks is a smart contracting platform that settles on Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is the base, like security, profile, security budget, and then all of the like fast functionality and expressive stuff that you want to do with uh, NFTs and DeFi and DAOs and like all of this other stuff that maybe some of you have heard about. That is what takes place on Stacks. And so it's that relationship between the two that, we feel really, really excited about. So another thing that we're really excited about is our smart contracting language. And so when you go, obviously into, you're making a decision like, hey, I want to design a product or build a product or really get invested in this community as a designer. I think that it's worth knowing the like main layer of technology that a developer that commits to, say, Solana or Ethereum or another chain, what they're really committing to is the smart contracting language. And our smart contracting language is called Clarity. The other like dominant one is called Solidity. And I think that the big difference between them is the fact that Clarity is human readable. And so it doesn't compile at execution. So it's literally a contract. Like I am agreeing that for every transfer of this, I'm getting this value, this person's getting this value, so on and so forth. So there's money at stake. And I think that what you've learned or what people maybe you've witnessed is that with some of these hacks or different exploits that happen, it's because the smart contract that you write, then when it's executed at the time of like compiling, it goes into a compiled format that you can't read. And then that format is what's out there in the world. And so if I'm on the receiving end of a smart contract and it's been compiled, I can't read it because it's been turned into bytecode. Whereas the smart contracting language that Stacks uses, Clarity, is always human readable. So you're always able to know what you're agreeing to. And that is another differentiator that we feel like really adds to the security and kind of is consistent with the ethos of Bitcoin. So another really interesting relationship with Bitcoin and differentiator and it's actually leading to a lot of really fun business use cases, is this our consensus protocol, which is called proof of transfer. So you'll hear people talk about like with Bitcoin, it's proof of work. Like we're going to expend electricity and that work is going to sort of result in us solving this puzzle. And then that is our proof of work that we solved the puzzle. And so we're getting compensated for that proof of work. Solana, Ethereum, some of those people, they will, different chains, they use what's called proof of stake. And so it's like, hey, we all hold a bunch of this token. And so we prove that we are good actors because we're staking that token. And so that is our proof that we are behaving in a good way. And so the way that we are able to participate in consensus is to have this staked, right? And so what Stacks does is called proof of transfer. And so it's kind of like Bitcoin, where you're, rather than spending electricity and using that sort of sign of, hey, I'm willing to like spend this resource to get this resource, we actually spend Bitcoin. And so people, different miners, they put Bitcoin into a smart contract, and then those miners are competing to win stacks. And so it's through sending that Bitcoin in that we're able to say, hey, like these are good faith actors, these are miners that are, you know, parting with a valuable resource, and they're hoping to get, you know, to help the consensus of this platform. And so they're going to be rewarded with stacks. And so what happens is, if you imagine like 100 miners put 1 Bitcoin each into a block and they compete for that block. Let's say that the winning miner gets 5 Bitcoins back. Well, the other 85, they don't just get burned. So all of the validators on the Stacks network, you can actually stack your stacks and you get a percentage. Every month you get 10% of whatever you're stacking in Bitcoin. And so that 85%, rather than just being burned like electricity that, you know, doesn't yield Bitcoin, it actually all goes to the network participants as like a 10% passive yield on the Bitcoin. So we think that that's pretty new and novel and pretty interesting. And so there's a lot of different developer tools that are coming to light, a lot of different dApps in terms of the technology and the products that are being built. And I think that from a designer point of view, what's interesting to think about is there are all of these new typologies. So you can think about like, hey, if I were a UX designer starting my career right at the start of Web 2, that would mean that I'm like really kind of, okay, what's the first like comment section to design, or a lot of different onboarding you know, processes, or kind of like maybe at the start of Web 2.5, which would be the mobile era, you could think, okay, I get to design like the first like mobile screens and mobile version of this and that. And so there's like a lot of like really new and exciting and challenging problems to be solved that were unprecedented at the time. And we feel that way about Web3 right now. So you have like a block explorer that you need to look at. You have a wallet that you need to interact with. You have marketplaces that you interact with. And so it's all about really sort of transmitting value, being able to display that value and help users understand that they are giving and receiving value through these different user interfaces, essentially. And it's all about the other thing that's really, really exciting about Web3 is that if you think about, say, the stock market, for instance, right? That's a lot of transactions, but that is all sort of, there's a lot of different siloed sources of information. So, you know, you can think about like earnings for a company, right? So that's filed quarterly with SEC or something, but you also have like the real-time stock information. So those are data sets that are in 2 different places, whereas with the economy that's going to emerge on the blockchain, all of that information is extractable and publicly viewable by anyone at any time. And so the data richness that you can begin to imagine coming from a situation like that is really, really exciting, I think, from a designer point of view. So this is just kind of some of the affiliations and integrations that we have with Stacks. It was originally a PhD project that started out of Princeton. There's some solid roots there. There's obviously a lot of like exchanges that we work with, Coinbase, Binance, things like that. And then different integrators that we're also working with. And so then there's also dApps that are being built on top of it. So if you think about like Bitcoin is kind of like, if it's, I used to be an architect, like I said. So if you think about Bitcoin as like the terra firma, the actual earth, and then Stacks is kind of like all of the infrastructure, the sewer system, the electrical lines, the transportation lines, things like that. And then all of the dApps are really like the individual stores and marketplaces and districts and all the fun, exciting things that as someone that lives in a city or goes to visit a city that they interact with. That's like what a DApp is as it relates to stacks and as stacks relates to Bitcoin. So yeah, right now, just the size, I guess, really to give you an understanding of where we're at as a community. So there's, give or take the day, there's a market cap of 1.5 billion. And then I think what's really the brag-worthy stat on this is not so much the market cap of stacks, but it's the fact that 1/3 of the market cap is locked in stacking. So that's I think a very committed community that is willing to stack their stacks, and that is also to strengthen the network, but also to earn some of that 10% Bitcoin yield that I was talking about. And then the size of the Twitter following, Discord, Telegram, and Reddit. This is just the size of the community that we're looking at, and really. Some recent studies came out showing the active developers on different ecosystems, and there's actually more developers committed to stacks on the Bitcoin blockchain than any other project on the Bitcoin blockchain. And when you consider Bitcoin developers and stacks developers, we're actually just second to Ethereum. And so really, I think that you're going to start to see a lot more development action and opportunities start to open up on our platform. These are just some of the use cases, different NFT marketplaces that you can go and check out. There's also decentralized domains. So if you imagine like in the world of decentralization, that's really great that like your data is somewhere else that's decentralized and it's censorship resistant and can't be hacked. But what about the hosting service? And so there's actually decentralized domains, which are in the .btc that are also on the blockchain. And so that's a really nice feature that I think is worth exploring. There's also derivatives of stacks. And so one of them is called city coins. And so just like you can spend Bitcoin to mine stacks, you can spend stacks to mine city coins. And so city coins is really like taking local governance and local municipal bonds and like funding of different local efforts and really trying to like bring that also into the Web3 era and decentralized era. So there are a series of city coins that have already launched. There's Miami Coin, New York City Coin. I think they're getting close to launching Austin Coin and Philadelphia Coin, and several others in the talks. And really, like what happens is this is all just like community driven, and so the community will decide, hey, we feel like there's a good opportunity to get like really great buy-in from the mayor or city council in this particular city. And so we are, as a community, are going to vote on which city we want to spin up a token for next. And so everyone like decides, and then all the miners start competing to earn that new token because they just think it's fun and they believe in it. And so what happens is all the stacks that goes into that contract to earn that new token, well, 30% of that stacks goes into a wallet that then earns Bitcoin yield, like I was talking about, and that wallet goes to the city. So it's like the city didn't ask for it. They didn't vote on it. They didn't have to do anything. And like, for instance, all of a sudden now the city of Miami has a treasury of totally like tax-free money, or sorry, like did not come from taxpayers. It was just sort of like a byproduct of this experiment, and their wallet is at like $30 million right now, and it's just earning more Bitcoin. And so like you can imagine in the future, like that might be worth a substantial amount of money. And so the grants program. So within the within the Stacks ecosystem, there's like you think of Stacks but then there's for-profit and nonprofit entities within it. So like some of the for-profit, there's a group called Trust Machines, which has several different dApps that they're developing. And then there's a company called Hiro, H-I-R-O, which does a lot of developer tooling. So they developed the wallet and the API and the block explorer and tools to help Clarity developers and things like that. And then there's a whole host of other entities. And so we're actually just concluding our second cohort of companies that are being launched through the Stacks Accelerator. So there's, you can check out the Stacks Accelerator cohort, but a whole like very, very diverse group of companies that are being born out of that. And so those are all the like for-profit ones. And then there's the nonprofit Stacks Foundation, which is where I work. And within the Stacks Foundation, it's really like the main mission is to support open source development. And so really we want as much of the effort that goes into Web3 and Stacks specifically to be open source so that everyone can benefit from it. And so that is open source infrastructure, tooling, services, community resources, research and development, educational resources, things like that. And really like, so Stacks grants, I'm the grant program manager. We offer a number of different grants. And so the four blue dots represent these grants. And so there's like a level 1 grant, a level 2, a level 3, and a level 4. And like level 1 is up to 5,000. Level 2 is up to 25,000. Level 3 is up to, I believe, 100,000, and level 4 is up to 500,000. And that's all equity free, no strings attached money. And really like the applications that we see and improve, the spirit behind them needs to be, hey, like we feel that this project, it's going to be open source, and we feel that it's going to move society in a direction towards a more user-owned internet, powered, you know, in our case, by Stacks and secured by Bitcoin. And so we funded UX UI designers that come to us and say, hey, I have an idea for a speculative design for a wallet, and I want to do all of the UX research. I want to survey all the different competitors out there in the world. I want to learn about Stack specific use cases of how you would use a wallet. I want to design a wallet, and I want to make all the Figma files and all the research like available for anyone to look at and use. And I think that was a grant that we awarded a gentleman that was in Nigeria, I think, and it was a $40,000 grant, which is a substantial amount of money, I feel. But it's a great opportunity for that designer to come in and really like help plant a flag and bring design into our community and be able to like show all of the developers that are working there that you would network with within the grants dashboard and say, hey, like, this is what I'm capable of as a designer. I got paid to do this. And it hopefully is going to lead to a lot of collaborations and maybe more work, and who knows. And so just kind of going up the list, there's hackathons, there's advocates, there's chapters, which is kind of like a regional group. We have Stacks Korea, Stacks Southwest United States, Stacks Australia, so on and so forth, that do a lot of like kind of awareness programs. There's hackathons, there's the grants that I talked about, there's residents. So a resident is like almost like an academic position where you have a 6 to 12 month residency. You get paid monthly to do research and create evergreen content for the community that's open source. There's a founder boot camp. First cohort's going right now. So you could come in, get a grant, say, hey, I want to develop an MVP, a prototype, a Figma prototype of this idea for a Web3 dApp, and then graduate, get accepted into the founder bootcamp, learn everything that you need to learn about getting product market fit, and then go from that into the Stacks Accelerator, where you would get $50,000 of initial money to develop a minimal viable product, and then demo the product and get connected with venture capital that would then allow you to raise a seed round. I think the average seed round coming out of this cohort with 3 million, and say, hey, I took this idea from a grant to this company that I started, all within this ecosystem. So some of the grant metrics, really, like, we awarded so the first year of the grant program was last year, and so we were awarding about $213,000 per quarter, so every 3 months, and it was about $8,500 per grant. And we now just wrapped up Q1 earlier this year, and we actually awarded more that first quarter than I should say 2022 Q1. We awarded more that quarter than we did all the entire previous year, and we're on track to award $4 million in grant. The average grant that we're awarding is $15,500. Yeah, so these are some of the design opportunities that we feel are available to you. So come in, get a small grant, make tutorials, education, that level of a grant. Come back, do speculative design or assist a team design. That could be a grant up to $25,000. Make a minimal viable product. That could be a grant up to $100,000. Probably come back after the accelerator for the big one of $500,000, but that would be a partner grant that's available to you. There's residencies that are available to you, and then the value of the Founder Bootcamp is about $30,000, and then there's the accelerator that I mentioned. We also have various full-time and part-time employment opportunities throughout the ecosystem. And I guess I'll leave it here. You can always reach me by email, will@stacks.org. We also, probably our primary mode of communication is our Discord. And if you go to grants.stacks.org, that will take you to the grants dashboard, where you can explore some of the grants that are out there and apply for a grant if you're interested. And I guess that is it.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah,
my brain is going. I'm definitely trying to process everything. Hopefully everyone here found it really helpful, and also maybe a little bit clarifying. But we did actually have a very detailed question from David in the questions tab. It's a multi-parter, so
oh, cool.
Yeah. So what do you think the largest growth challenges for Web3 are? And that it will need before it can go mainstream. So in relation to regulation, scams, rug pulls, education, killer app, all that fun stuff. And then you touched on it a little bit, but how can designers help this industry grow?
Yeah, I think that regulation is definitely an albatross for a lot of different projects, because there's this gray area of what is a security and what's not a security. And so the implications of that, like having a token and saying, hey, we are buying this token or acquiring this token with the expectation that the value is going to go up. And so that makes it a security. What's really cool about Stacks and building on Bitcoin is that the US government has already deemed Bitcoin a commodity. And so Bitcoin has different regulations and is treated differently. And so there's definitely like tax implications when it comes to like capital gains and things like that are still trying to be sorted out. But in terms of like really altering your ability to transact with Bitcoin, that question's already been answered on that front. In terms of like the biggest challenge to onboarding, I think last estimates I saw, there's 200 million people on the planet with some Bitcoin. And I think that by 2025, the expectation is that number will be 1 billion. And I think that really the main way to get from 200 million to a billion is, oddly enough, UX. It's literally, it is a communication issue. It is a presentation issue. It is a clarity issue, like clarification issue. And really it's like, if you, there are some things, like the deeper that you go down the rabbit hole, the more that you will learn about this. And so there's like the idea of, hey, I bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase, and that's like a centralized exchange. And so that's one level of engagement. But then to say, hey, I want to transfer that Bitcoin to my wallet, which is a web browser, and I want to use this token, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever, to basically, when you are engaging with a contract call through a web browser using a web wallet, you're sending a little bit of money because there are people on the other, network participants that are basically have to agree to pick up your transaction. You're not paying Amazon Web Services to pick up your transaction. You are saying, hey, I want my data decentralized. So you are actually parting with a little bit of money to make sure that your data is out there. And so really, like, if you think about the learning curve of going from, hey, I bought some Bitcoin or whatever on Coinbase, to just getting a wallet in your browser and transferring that to your wallet, let alone connecting your wallet to a dApp and then interacting with the dApp and safely understanding like what you're doing the whole time, those user flows and that onboarding sequence to get from through that whole process is a big enough challenge right there. And then you also have like ideas of like really wanting to self-custody. And so there's hardware wallets where you can move your tokens or your assets offline so that it can't be hacked or seized, and you have ownership of it that way. That's a whole nother. So there's opportunities both on the software and the hardware side for UX UI designers, absolutely. But then there's like, you think about the creator economy and everything that touches. So art, music, publishing, like writing, all of those things operate. There's a business model, and those business models right now all rely on ad related support and subscription related support. And so this is like, it's a totally new like paradigm shift, not just in the web, but in the economy. And so really, like, sorry for the long-winded question. I'm just get excited about this stuff. But yeah, I mean, really the design opportunities are endless. And so that's why I say the biggest challenge to widespread adoption is design, which, like, I was an architect for 20 years. Like, to say that like designers are that critical to a process is not something that I normally heard as an architect, unfortunately. And it's so refreshing to like be able to say that to a room of designers, that like you literally are the missing, link in the blockchain.
So before we went live for the webinar, I know I mentioned to you, like, there were other groups that approached us at Design Lab saying, hey, like, we need designers, we're building all this stuff, but we just don't have designers who can put faces to these things. So in your personal opinion, why do you think it's been so hard to actually find designers who can actually help create all of this content and, the apps that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's probably a lot of different reasons. You think about composability, and so starting off as both a developer or a designer, you can think about like going onto Figma and just being able to like find case studies or Figma files that have pre-made components that like help you understand, hey, this is how you build an email client on a mobile app, or so on and so forth. So like the actual like design challenges that designers start off with are very much aligned with that, and a lot of the resources that you have available to you are still there. And so I think that really there's like this content creation part that will, once like you start to see a lot more resources available on Figma, on Dribble, so on and so forth, for designers to be able to use, then you can start to like tinker with those ideas and pull them apart and create your own version of it a little faster. And so I think that will lower the bar. And I also think that like really just like anyone else, like understanding how these concepts work and like demystifying them. I mean, I had to commit a lot of time to like teach myself this stuff and learn about it. And it's it's not simple, and it's I think that like the more people that are willing to put in the hard work now and learn about it, I think that you are going to be like the early adopter, and I truly believe you'll be rewarded for that in terms of like getting to the space early, being a pioneer, like really kind of laying the groundwork. And I really feel like the business models and the jobs and all of that, like it's so unprecedented that like I don't think that these jobs that the people in this cohort will hold like in 5 years even exist. And the other really cool thing about it is like it's it's all about decentralization. So working remotely, working not just for a single employer, but really like working for multiple projects that you believe in. And hey, like I am opting into this agreement rather than I'm being hired, you know, for this job. So really like there's a whole different ethos when it comes to like the actual relationship between employer and employee. It's way more about just participating in what you want to participate in. So I think that that's another really interesting thing it's a design problem and a learning curve issue.
For sure. We have a question that's, you know, are there any specific skills that you feel that designers should have in order to really provide value in this space?
I think to be able to clearly communicate, it's like it's always about finding that fine line between under communicating and over communicating. And so there's definitely like you want to make people very aware of like, hey, this is like you know, you are responsible for these funds that you are holding in this wallet or something like that. And so you need to make it very apparent and very clear to people, but you also don't want to like make it like an abysmal experience. You know, you want to make it be a fun and enjoyable experience, but also like clearly advertise like, you know, these are the risks that you're engaging in by, you know, going down this path. And, you know, these are the potential rewards. And so really, yeah, like I think just being able to like start being able to take like a design exercise, and rather than start thinking about it at the like wireframe level, think about it at the like hand sketch level, because everything that you're doing, and I know that that's part of the curriculum and what's always encouraged, but like I think that that's just meant to be like underscoring the fact that you're actually your design flow is, there's a lot of interoperability that's involved, and like, you know, communicating between different platforms or different data sets and things like that. And so thinking about how your product and your experience can weave those things together is like a really really important thing in my mind.
So at large, it really just seems like you would still apply the same basic design principles. It's just kind of adjusting it based on the needs of the space, or just kind of like figuring out how to tell people about the space, right?
Yeah, figuring out how to tell people about the space. And yeah, I mean,
That's awesome. So I guess this kind of this ties into, I guess, the next question from Chase is, you know, do you have specific examples of like what great design looks like currently in the space, if that you can point them to? Just because, you know, they understand that you got to learn all these things, you have to like learn how to talk the talk and, you know, understand the terminologies. But yeah, do you have any examples that you can point us to in terms of like if we want to look up like what an app looks like that's built?
yeah. If I think a really beautiful one, if you go to alexgo.io, that is a gorgeous website that a friend of mine did. Yeah, alexgo.io. I'll put it down here. And that is, I think that this will give you an understanding. This is a DeFi app. And so DeFi stands for decentralized finance. And so rather than like saying, hey, I'm going to put my money in the bank and the bank pays me, whatever 0.01% interest on my savings account. But really what they're doing is they're taking my money and they are going and doing all this stuff with it, and they're earning a lot more. So my money's not actually in the bank. I'm getting this sliver of interest compared to what they're earning, because it's all like I'm trusting them and I'm paying to trust them. So DeFi, like the trade-off is like we are like trusting the blockchain or trusting technology. And so you actually can earn more money because there's like different trade-offs, right? So rather than paying an intermediary, there's less overhead because it's just code. And so there's different experiences. And so anyway, this is a good experience because you can see that there's this landing page, and the landing page like gives you this kind of like clear fork in the road. And it's like, okay, here you can stay like kind of at the static page level and learn about the docs and go to see the team and like all of these things, or you can click this special button and launch the app. And then you launch the app, and that's when you would then connect your wallet and do some of these transactional things and like really engage with crypto and with DeFi. And so I think that it's like that really fun like threshold that you walk through to say, hey, like this is like Web2 where the link that I sent you to, and now I'm going to click this button and I'm going to go to Web3. And that is, I think, a really fun experience and a great representation. And it's a really well designed, well done product.
So we do have more of an observation in the questions, but Joseph is basically sharing, thoughts that likely it may feel unapproachable, mainly due to the jargon that's being used in this space.
Okay.
I know that's a big blocker for me. So the one thing that I do want to call out, and this is probably for my own clarification, but hopefully others here have the same question. We talk about decentralization a lot. In a nutshell, could you explain to us, what that is and why that's actually like, what's the benefit of decentralization?
The benefit of decentralization, right? So I think, it's like I think that we can all agree, no matter like what your perspective is on politics or the world, that there is really like kind of a breakdown in trust in the world right now. And I think that that breakdown in trust is because there is so much centralization of information and of power. And so wherever you like agree or disagree, I think that you can kind of acknowledge the fact that, hey, there's like 5 major companies in web, in tech, that control like a huge amount of the market cap and a huge amount of the developer experience and a huge amount of data. And so the way around that, because you're always going to like be combating that, is to say, hey, like let's provide an alternate, and the alternate is decentralization. And so rather than like saying we're going to have these big mammoth companies that house all of the data in these big chunks, the alternate is to say we're going to have like tons of different people that house the data all over the place in these small little chunks that all need to be kind of reconciled using blockchain technology. So really, like at the basics, all you need to think of is like Web2 is like an Excel spreadsheet. Web3 is a blockchain, or like your graphic that you sent along. Like imagine this sequence, this chain of like blocks of information. And so rather than all of the information being like a cell within that database, think of that database being represented with every single one of those blocks. And so every single one of those blocks needs to be checked and reconciled together. And so rather than just trusting this one company to like hold your data and be accountable and not be malicious or whatever, you're trusting code and trusting that the code, will reconcile everyone's version of the data, and you can verify that it's correct because everyone verifies it at the same time. And so really, to me, that's the fork in the road of centralized versus decentralized.
Got it. All right, that helps me a lot. Hopefully that helped others too. So we are coming to time. Will, is there anything that you'd like to say or share as a closing for others to like take away?
Just, I really love the UX UI process. Whether you are interested in stacks, interested in a grant, any of those things, if you're ever just like, hey, I have a design I would like another set of eyes on, or I want to like have a focus group with like someone that's interested in talking about design thinking and stuff. I just like to do that. So feel free to engage me, whether it be about stacks, about Bitcoin, about grants. If you don't get all that stuff, I totally understand. It took me a long time and a lot of chipping away to get through to it. And so if you just want to hang out and talk about design, I love doing that too. So and I'll probably like prompt you with, hey, you should also watch this YouTube clip, and maybe this will help explain, you know, some things a bit better. So it'll definitely be like an ulterior motive, but it's more because I believe in the value proposition of decentralization, not that I'm like shilling stacks or something like that. It's like, I know it's difficult to understand, and I want people to stick with the journey because I do think it's worth it.
Well, it all starts somewhere, right? Like once we have more and more people who start to understand little bits and pieces, then you can almost like pull all of that together and say, okay, I think collectively this is how we understand it, and then start kind of like disseminating that information in things that's slightly more digestible, right? Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. Wait, hold on. 2 questions. Can we share design to you? Personal question. Yes, I believe you can just contact Will. Is it will@stacks.org? We'll toss it in the chat one more time. Will is awesome.
That's my email. And then on Twitter, I am at Corcoran Will, or also will.btc.
Nice.
So that's my handle. You can find me there. Stacks Discord, like honestly, one thing I hear over and over and over again is like how, and I went through the same experience, how like kind of insanely welcoming and supportive the community is. So if you have questions and you do one thing, join the Stacks Discord and just start to like hang out and answer questions. You'll meet friends, you'll meet peers, you'll be able to like help people that are on this journey with you, and you can self-educate together rather than like feeling like, hey, I'm staring at the wall trying to figure this out on my own.
Awesome. Well, and we also just moved to Discord from Slack, so that might be a
bit cool.
Yeah, so it's very easy for you all to add a server now.
Yeah, I'll have to join your server.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. We all appreciate the information. If anyone has any questions, you know where to find me on Discord. Will, it was lovely meeting you. I'm sure we will have some follow-up emails soon because I know I talked to you about a potential hackathon maybe. Yep. So please potential do. Everyone, maybe a hackathon, but more news to come. All right.
Designer meets developer hackathon. That's the dream.
We love it. All right. Cool beans. Thank you, everyone. Right. Thank you, Will. We will chat with you later. Bye.
Thank you.